And we are live. This is really live, by the way. And Michael Sartain, good buddy of mine, is in town because both him and I are going to be going to a Tai Lopez networking event tomorrow. Funny enough, here in LA. Actually, I think that's like in the original house where Tai.
No, it is.
Would do
I looked.
Oh, I thought it was.
It's slightly different. So I looked at it and I was like looking for the same infinity pool. And I could be wrong, but it doesn't look like it's the same house. But it looks very similar to that house with the infinity. Yeah.
Okay, I was hoping that it would be. Okay, well, either way, near where the Here in My Garage ad got shot. And what we're going to be shooting into today is high status networking. And we thought that we would do that just in the spirit of being here doing networking. Obviously, this has huge ramifications as far as making more money, making better friends, getting an insane dating life. I mean, ridiculous. And maybe even things like getting a promotion at work, advancing within your career. It's going to be huge in so many different areas. Now, as we lead into this, what I'm going to be doing is talking about stories with you that actually enlighten me into why this is so incredibly important. But as we lead into this, I just want to let you know, I'm coming out to the Pacific Northwest this fucking week. Portland and Seattle. It's going to be awesome. I'd recommend that you fly in. For Portland people, that'll be in the middle of the week in the evening. One night affair. It's going to be awesome. But the Seattle one is going to be 2 full days, totally for free, full-on seminar, kind of thing you'd spend about $5,000 to attend. Pacific Northwest, Seattle's probably the most beautiful place in the country at this time of year. I'd recommend that you fly into Seattle. I'll see you there this week. We're going to be covering how to make cash, OG social skills, how to get spiritually tapped in. It's going to be awesome. Very excited to see you there. Now, by the way, if you can't make it and you just want the very best secrets from the event, you're not going to meet me in person. You're not going to network. You're not going to get the energy. We're not going to go out at the end of the day. But if you just want the secrets, because the event is loaded with secrets, I mean, stacked, click this link below, which is the Higher Purpose program. And that's actually a course with the best secrets from that event. It's step-by-step. It's not meandering. It's not me ranting. It's not us joking around. We're not talking about Tai Lopez. It's just cut and dry to the point. Very potent. Kind of program that you'd probably spend about $600 on usually. Totally for free. Click link Higher Purpose program. It's going to blow your mind. Look, if you watch that program, Higher Purpose program, within 4 or 5 days, your life is going to look dramatically different if you apply what's in here, okay? It's very fast results, very comprehensive. Get inside a Higher Purpose program, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Seattle and Portland, okay? We've got a bunch of other free events coming up too, which you'll see right over there. Honolulu, Chicago, New York, DC, Boston, Philadelphia, a bunch of them, okay? But anyway, let's get into it. So, I'm going to tell the story of how I got interested in what Michael has to teach. Okay, so first of all, this was me in maybe like 2010, and I met a guy named Nick Daniels. And Nick came up to me and he said, "Hey, Owen, I think what you teach is awesome. It's really cool. But what you do is like superhero shit, because what you're doing is like defying all the fucking odds. You're basically beating all the odds in order to meet new people and to have a social life." And he said, "Why don't you actually pause and work on building a social circle? And if you did that, you would literally just have to do nothing." Now, I personally believe there's all these advantages to working on how to just meet people randomly. It builds your subcommunication, builds your frame. It's like socializing in the most pure form. It's a beautiful thing. And even though I do huge parties at my house all the time, I will still go out and meet people regularly because I like it really just for the more sport aspect of it, okay? It's just like a joy to do. It's just a lot of fun and you learn a ton from it. Made me a better public speaker, changed my life. But as far as things just being very easy, what Nick said to me is he said, "Look, why don't you spend a month with me and we're not going to try to talk to anybody. We're just going to go and hang out and build a social circle and watch how your life changes." Well, it was mind-blowing what he showed me. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Later, I wound up meeting Michael in Vegas, and as well as Michael's friend Luke Krogh. And both Michael and Luke basically showed me the most incredible ideas on building a social circle. And I'd be out there with Michael, and this was before, Michael's a very famous guy now. Michael was not famous back then. And Michael would bring me into like fucking parties, and he would bring me fucking everywhere. He'd be trying to get me to use Snapchat at the time. It was completely fucking mind-blowing. I'm gonna talk a lot about the success barriers surrounding me initially using things like Snapchat. But like, what was it like for you meeting me and seeing that I'm, you know, kind of going about it the way that I'm going about it, and you've built this like huge kind of social situation in Vegas, and what were you trying to show me? What did you want me to understand?
So in the beginning, like when you and I met, we met in 2011 in Chicago, and back then, like that was the first year that Instagram had started up. Mm-hmm. So I still kind of understood, like It's really weird. I have a friend of mine named Tom Sosnoff, and this guy's a billionaire. He sold several brokerages. He used to be a pit trader. Do you remember pit traders? The guys who sit there and they hold the buy and sell things at the New York Stock Exchange. He said the first day he saw automated trading, he was like, we're all out of a fucking job. When I saw what was going on with social media, I was like, we're all out of a fucking job. Like, I really saw what was going to happen was, so like, as men, we like our validation from, we like our validation from compliance. From women like their validation from attention. And I was like, man, a lot of these women are going to be able to get their validation without having to go out anymore. And so we're going to have to do something to kind of get them to come out. And so that's where I came into the idea of understanding how events worked, of how social media was able to like scale whatever I was trying to do. It's really funny because you remember when online marketing started, you could make you could make so much money from Facebook ads because a lot of people hadn't got into it. Ty Lopez, he spends like $19-20 million on that first ad of him in the garage. He gets 74 million views, more than that, like different versions of it here in my garage. He got more money. He made more money per dollar spent because he was first to market. Does that make sense? He understood the concept of going online and then using that to scale a business. For some reason now everyone does it. Everyone buys meta ads. Meta ads is really common for people to do that. But the idea of scaling your business by using social media or by using the internet in general makes sense. But for some reason, when it comes to networking, we don't want to do it. For some reason, when it comes to networking, when I say, hey, dude, your Instagram makes you look like a terrorist, like that isn't, like, stop looking like that. Your Instagram makes you look like a really big weirdo who stalks people. You need to change your Instagram. People don't grasp what I'm saying, and they think, well, this little change I have, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get on Instagram. This happens a lot of times with 40 or 50-year-old men who've been divorced because when they got married, there was no Instagram. And now that they're divorced, it's like you have to explain to them, like, dude, you look weird as shit. You got to do something to fix this. And they don't want to do it because they're very hard-headed, and they feel like going on social media and talking about themselves or whatever comes off as try hard. And you want to know something? It is try hard, except that everyone's doing it. And the thing you have to know is that the guy who's getting the business you want, he's on social media. The guy who's getting the girl you want, he's on social media too. Why aren't you on there? And so after a while, it becomes more and more obvious. So like back then when we first got into Snapchat before Instagram, it was one of these things where it was like, hey man, you can see where everybody's at. Like, I don't have to guess what the cool club is. I know where I'm going. I know like who the people I want to hang out with is. And here's the other thing. I can display certain levels of access, value, competency, relevancy, and access to scarce resources using my social media with very little perceived effort. And the crazy part is I can see who watched my story, or I can see who watched my snap. I can see who watched my story. And like that's the most mind-blowing. When IG Story came out in 2017, that broke everything. Because once IG Story came out, you could post memes, you at the club, wherever, and like you could literally see every girl who watched your story. And I was like, oh, everyone's gonna start doing this. And no one did. It was like one of the weirdest things I ever seen. So it's very interesting to me. And then, Bilzerian, he goes away like after COVID happens, and he gets rid of the house, the 10979 Shalon Road house, the big Ignite house. When he gets rid of it, he takes about a year and a half and writes a book. And when he writes the book, like in one of the early chapters, he says social media is the best way of showing high status with low perceived effort. So scalable levels of status with low perceived effort. Now, what I just told you, that's what I've realized after the last 10 years. When I first showed you Snapchat, it was just like, man, this is a great way to see where the girls are.
Yeah.
This is a great way to see where the things are going. Because I've always felt like this, and maybe some of the people who are watching this have felt like this too, but I've always felt like when I was in high school especially, or even when I was in college, there was a place the cool kids were getting invited to and I wasn't getting invited to. There was a party where all the pretty girls were, but I wasn't getting invited to. There were the guys who always got the best business deals and had the most connections, but I wasn't getting invited. I wasn't part of that group. I didn't know how to play politics with my boss. Like there was these things where it was very clear that certain people had access to more and better things. And at first, I hated that. I hated those people. I thought that was super unfair. The hobnobbers and I call bootlickers, whatever. And then later I understood after meeting Dr. David Buss, it's just an evolutionary adaptation. It's an adaptation. Humans that were able to network with other humans and build tribes and become the leader of those tribes always had, throughout history, access to more resources food, and women, always throughout history. It wasn't that networking was this weird thing. It was an evolutionary adaptation that's been passed down through 200,000 years of Homo sapien evolution that we've gotten to this point. Because when you think about it, like the individual Homo sapien by himself cannot stand up to the bear. He cannot stand up to the lion. He cannot stand up to the tiger, but the tribe of men can. And so men becoming tribal was an adaptation to become the apex predator on the planet. So what would that do? Well, that means today you having that ability to lead men would be the most advantageous thing that you could do. I've said this a million times. The apex of human existence is a family and accomplishing goals with other men. That is the apex of you think it's making all the money or having a threesome. No, the apex of human existence is accomplishing goals with people, with other people. Beating the odds, and you and a team. That's why we watch the World Cup. It's why we watch the Super Bowl. It's why we watch war movies. It's because we are watching groups of men accomplish a goal together. And that, to me, that is really, when you think about it evolutionarily, those are the men who survived, who grew the most. And you can think about that, everyone from like the Catholic Church to like Genghis Khan to whoever you want to say, but like groups of men coming together, the settlers who went west and settled the Western United States. All those people coming together, fighting wars. The U.S. and the United States and Britain fighting in World War II. These are groups of men coming together to accomplish goals, right? And then now you can think about it, people coming together to build a business, people coming together to run a sales team, to build a charity, whatever. Accomplishing goals with other people is the apex of human existence. So knowing that, then I was like, okay, networking is not this foreign thing. It's an evolutionary adaptation that I need to learn and study. So I started studying it, and then I started seeing these little tricks that I learned from hanging out with club promoters to get like 70 girls to come to my party are actually things that I can do to network with high status dudes. And then so I started doing it over and over again. And with you and with everybody else that I've met that's high status, the first thing I always try to do is offer value. I know that we always say offer value. What it really means is solve problems. I'm a problem solver. I'm Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction. I'm the wolf. If you call me, I'm going to solve problems for you. The way I communicate with people I love is by solving problems for them. My girlfriend is confused by this sometimes because she thinks that I should just sit there and listen. And I'm like, no, I'm solving. And like by the time she's done talking, I've solved all of her problems and she can't figure out what's going on. And then I was like, this is why people want to work for me. This is why people want to be friends with me. Like there's no good reason that like Andrew Tate would have introduced me to Justin Waller and introduced me to Fresh and Fit, and introduced me to Rollo Tomassi. Why did he do that? He did that because I was trying to help him solve problems. Why? Why is Justin Waller and I really good friends? Why are my friends with Rollo Tomassi, Dan Bilzerian, Greg O'Gallagher, Brandon Carter? Why are my friends with these guys? Why has Ty Lopez invited me to come to this thing tomorrow, wants me to come on his podcast? I'm not that famous. Why? Dan Fleischman, I'm not that famous. Why is it? It is because every time we have a discussion, I'm like, Ty, how can I solve a problem for you? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's always the way it is for them. I'm like, what problem can I solve? And so that to me is the ultimate thing that I learned from studying networking as an evolutionary adaptation. The people who speak the language of problem solving, the extreme way to say it is what Justin Waller said. Justin Waller said, if we can't make money together, fuck you, I don't want to be friends. Now, I don't say it like that. That's the way Justin says it. But that's an extreme example of what I'm talking about. And if you don't do that, you got to understand there's one Owen Cook and there's hundreds of thousands of Owen Cook fans, but there's only one of you. It's a supply and demand thing. You can't sit there and be friends with all of them. But the ones you are going to be closer friends with, I mean, from a certain standpoint, I watched Foundations. I watched The Blueprint Decoded. I was a customer who became one of your friends. How did I do that? Because I was always trying to solve problems for you guys, right? And that is the thing that I learned for 25 years of studying this.
Okay, so I've got so much to say about this. That's a lot of. Okay, so I'm going to begin to unpack this. I'm going to begin to unpack what I learned from you, and I'm going to give my thoughts on some of the stuff you said. Okay, so the first thing was I'm going to describe. Okay, so imagine I used to live in this big mansion up at the top of Runyon Canyon. If you live in LA. Is this like the birthday cake house now?
It's looking like this off pinkish color.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I used to live in this huge crib, right? So Michael would be up there, and we'd be like in the basement. And he would always pull out his phone. He's like, Snapchat, bro. You need to get on Snapchat, bro. And he would kind of flip around and show me this thing, and there'd be like these different little filters and stuff like that. And he would keep telling me how good it is. And I would ignore it for a number of different reasons. And I want to explain this to you because I believe that most of you guys are ignoring it. So I want to show you also why he had to talk me into it. The first one was that I'm a really big fan of personal growth. And so, and I bet you that you probably hear this a lot, or maybe you don't, I don't know. You tell me if you hear this a lot.
Okay.
But the big one is Cal Newport talks about deep work. Do you wind up hearing this with people you work with?
Maybe. Keep
Oh,
on.
okay, interesting. Okay, so the big one that I hear is like Cal Newport with deep work basically tells you uninstall Instagram, uninstall social media, don't get distracted. Yeah, so my answer to that, by the way, longer term, is be the creator, not the consumer. Okay, be the creator, not the consumer. Or maybe like, flip through other people's profiles and stuff, but don't get like addicted on it. So be the creator, not the consumer. But regardless, that was a big one for me, was that most of the money that I've ever made in my life was by shutting out the world and just focusing. So that was a big factor. But my counter argument to that is that when you realize how much time that you're going to save on this, it actually makes sense to use it properly. Okay, but anyway, we'll get back to that later. The other thing, and this is like kind of more my own personal beliefs. It's a little bit woo-woo. It's just my own personal beliefs, how I feel about the world. But what I believe is that in spiritual growth, the two major components that show that somebody's growing spiritually, first of all, is that they become more at the cause than the effect. Okay, so the true definition of hell is when you believe that you're at the effect of life. And so a lot of the time, if you show somebody a tool that would really, really, really profoundly put them at the cause of their life, there's almost a spiritual resistance to it because you live in your own personal version of hell. Like the energy of hell is inside of you and you're not ready to be in that much awesome fucking control of your life. The other one, though, is that I believe that the hallmark of spiritual evolution is that things become easier. Like you just naturally tend to resonate with like, you know what, like life doesn't have to be like super hard. Like I don't have to like grind it out all the time and like be in this fucking hell and like I'm at the effect of life and everything sucks and everything's fucking hard. It's like life can actually be easier. And so I think at a certain level when you showed me that, like even spiritually, it's like, no, I'm Owen. Like I go out, I grind it out to the bitter end. I even have like a video like in Philadelphia, like grind it out to the bitter end. And like I still do that to this day out of joy. But the thing is like I'm that guy where it's like, give me that like 15-mile hike on the side of the cliff and I'm gonna go and there's a fucking grizzly bear. Like not even kidding. Like right? It's like, let's make it fucking hard. And there's a joy in that, right? Like a little bit of like David Goggins vibes. But my view is like, have your David Goggins moment for your own joy, your own fun. You've got your own things like that. Yeah. But at the same time, you could also have things be a little bit easier too. So I still love, I go out 4 or 5 nights a week to this day, and I love to just grind it out. And like, I'm now kind of, walking around, hobbling around again, but I've even been doing this you were with me. We're doing this shit in a fucking wheelchair. I'm running around in a fucking wheelchair going and meeting people at random. And it's a challenge, and I love the challenge. And I even love going out in the wheelchair. I do it for joy. I do it to work on my social skills. I do it to improve my vocal projection, vocal tone, public speaking, frame control, social awareness, getting in state, getting in momentum, dealing with it kind of like this giant puzzle. It's all fun to me as a hobby. But for me, given that I could do a 200-person party at my house anytime that I want, sometimes you just want to go hunt for the meat yourself rather than go to the grocery store. But sometimes, bro, the grocery store exists for a fucking reason. And that's where things like social media come in and container events come in. So I think like to a certain extent when you were showing me this, I had sort of like a spiritual resistance to it. Like it couldn't be that easy.
Me too. I had the same thing. I mean, remember I was out with Mystery back in 07, 08, for years. Like, but wait, after you were, but like I would go out with him all the time, and I would go out with a bunch of other PUAs like all the time. And I remember doing this, and the bitter end for you guys was different. For me, because I was in Vegas, the bitter end is you go to Dre's till 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you go to the Rhino, and then you leave the Rhino and it's noon, and you go straight to the pool after. That was the bitter end. Like you were holding on you were like not gonna let this set go. You were not gonna let this set go no matter what. But no, I was the same way, and it's one of these things where like I still have friends that are like this. It's like that methodology of just going out. And I still do a ton of cold approach, but I do cold approach to build a social circle for men and women. And that methodology, while it worked, because it's fun, because you're by yourself or you're just with a couple of people, and it's like you against the world. So I get it. Like I totally understand. The thing for me is, I remember going to clubs in Vegas and then seeing like the DJ and the people like at the really nice tables and the hosts. And I remember like, man, these guys have it solved. Like they're just surrounded by beautiful women all the time. And then now that like I remember the first time I hosted a bikini competition at at a rehab. And I remember my name was on the flyer, wondering if I was going to get in. Still with this mindset of like, how am I going to eke my way into this? To where it's later, it's like, like Crystal Hefner is inviting me to the Playboy Mansion, and then I'm bringing. Remember, I stayed at your place, and I was using your camera to go film at the Playboy Mansion. Crystal Hefner invited me and told me to bring whoever I wanted to the Playboy Mansion, and I was like, this side is way better. Like, I like this end way better. Like the part where I get invited to everything and I spend no money, I like that. The part where I bring 14 girls to SDK and get a comp and pay nothing, that I was like, I like this side better. And it was more. It was made possible to me by a couple of guys that I met. There were some club promoters in Atlanta that I met, Max Smith, Rocky Garrett, some guys like that. There was Sam Rima. I don't know if you know Sam. He lives here. He used to work for Playboy. Sam was another guy. I was like, wow, this is like really open. A couple of club promoters here. And then Bilzerian obviously was huge. Like Bilzerian for me was able to see like how far pre-selection could go, et cetera, and like his level of networking. I think Nick Daniels is the one who introduced you to Dan. Dan actually introduced me to Nick Daniels because we play paintball together every week. And it was just one of these things where it's like, it was so obvious to me that the other thing is the really high status people that used to go out back in like to Ladue in like 2005, they weren't going out anymore. They just weren't. The crowds were uglier and like weirder. And I don't know how to explain it, but if you could go, we could take you out to nightclubs in Hollywood in 2003. It was so hard to get in. The girls were phenomenally beautiful. It was so different than it is now. And the reason why is because social media made a lot of us realize we can make money from home. We can get our validation from home. We can make money. Like girls can get their validation from men. Girls can make money on OnlyFans. Girls can make money on Patreon. Guys can make money on their podcasts.
Yeah, here in LA too, it's more about exclusive events and like private parties and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that was the other thing. In Vegas, we would always do the club. So it was always, there's this exclusive area of the nightclub, which was the stage. So I'm always on stage at Omnia. I'm always at the stage at XS, and I can take people up there with me. So I was always on stage. And but you can't really do mansion parties in Vegas. You can do a few of them, but it's hard because the HOAs there don't like mansion parties because we have the strip. Here, the mansion parties were incredible. When Pascal Mawad would throw a mansion party, or Dan Bilzerian would throw a mansion party, or the Playboy mansion party, or there were certain mansions where they would have the Maxim party. It was absolutely incredible. Like the ugliest girl there was the hottest girl you'd ever seen in your life, and that was so incredible. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's where they all went. That's where all the girls went. Like I didn't understand it before. And it's funny because when guys come take my program or they come on a boot camp with me, and then they see like the places I get them access to, like Babes in Toyland, something like that. They're like, oh, this is where they all went. I understand this now. And like you just start to understand this. So here's the other thing. So I host all.
Also, the vibe is so much more friendly.
Yeah.
Like when you go out to a proper high-end party, if you're hosting a high-end party, everybody is so incredibly friendly, and you don't really experience rejection or people being rude to you. It just doesn't happen. Everybody's friends with each other. Now, to be fair, that can create a little bit more of like a false positive because everyone's so fucking friendly. But I still think that's overall a better thing because you just get in such a good mood and it has a big upward spiral.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely it. The other thing that I started doing, we were talking about this earlier on the couch here, we were talking about inviting people to things. Mm-hmm. And so I was always here's the funny thing. If you invite people to high status events that they can't go to, they still say thank you. Mm-hmm. I have literally thousands of open threads with famous people and incredibly beautiful women that I've never met before because I invited them to the Maxim party, Miami Swim Week, a Teatro party, Babes in Toyland, Paradise Challenge, Black Tape Project, any of these things, or my bikini competition, the Playboy Summer Search in Las Vegas. And the other thing that I would do is like some of the guys I knew worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The first thing I would say to them was like, hey, this Friday, do you want to come and judge a bikini competition? And they would always say yes. Or do you want to come on my show? The other thing is the podcast was another way where I could invite them to something, or I would introduce them to someone. I always knew the next thing I was going to invite people to. Whenever you were in town, it was one of the other things was like, you'd be in town and you'd have 20 dudes with you. And I was like, I know how to get the guys into this club. Yeah. I was like, I can get 20 guys into this nightclub. I can't do this in Miami. Yeah. There's a few places I can do this in LA, but I can't. But in in Vegas, if you have 35 guys, I can get all 35 guys into Omnia on Tuesday. No questions asked, no problem. And so that was another thing. It was like, I knew that was the problem I could solve for you. And by the way, that's the problem I used to solve for Mystery whenever I would go out with him. Is like, I knew the place where I could get all the guys in. Does that make sense? And I knew where the girls were. So it was just understanding these concepts. And then the other thing was like here's a concept. I have a friend of mine. He is a real estate agent. He wants to have the biggest blowout real estate agent convention to meet a bunch of people. So we would get this Blue Heron home, this huge mansion that was made out of all of glass. And then we did an animal rescue charity and invited every single female influencer in the city to show up. And so every real estate agent in the city's there, also the mortgage brokers. And there were 3 times as many girls as guys that showed up to this thing because it was an animal rescue charity. Do you think anyone ever said no to him from that point on? Whenever he threw a real estate event, he was like the king of all the real estate agents in the city because he was popular for doing that. I tell people like this: if I'm an accountant, I want to be the accountant with the best parties. If I'm a real estate agent, if I'm a doctor, Lord forbid, if you're a plastic surgeon, it's the easiest thing in the world to network because there's so many women who just want to meet you. So there's just so many avenues that you can take this through. And then the other one was like, I have one client. He's a Mark Perlberg, he's an accountant. And you know what he did? He started hosting these Zoom calls, just basically like the ones where I was coaching him. And he would sit on the Zoom call and he would answer people's questions for like 3 hours. And so you were like trying to do your own taxes. And then you came to the realization after 3 hours, fuck this. I'm going to hire this guy to do my taxes. Now he has more business than he knows what to do with. And it's just simple understanding of networking as an evolutionary adaptation. You do that and it works and it's absolutely fantastic. Another strategy I've used recently, and I haven't even told you about this. Let's say I want a certain person on my show. I surround him. Basically, I get all of his friends and other people he's had on the show, every single one of them on my show. And then I have them all message him at the same time. And it cracks. And that's how I get guys that are just a little bit out of my league to show up on the show.
That's amazing. And I would say that a really, really common feedback that I get with this is basically, so here's different things that I'll hear, are you saying that if you don't have a massive network that you can't meet people anymore? Are you saying that's impossible? Or they'll say things like, they'll say, why would I want to meet high status people when I could just meet regular people? When the funny thing is, we're not even telling you that you can't meet regular people. We're just trying to expand your ability to have options, okay? Yeah. So that's another one. Another one that I think a lot of people don't get is that I want you to think about this a little bit like you're sharpening the saw. So in other words, if you're sawing and sawing and sawing and sawing and sawing and sawing, right? We'll say that your saw is like a certain amount sharpened. If you could just take a couple days to like stop sawing. Now I get it that you're not sawing, right? So you're kind of losing your sawing progress. I get that. But if you could just sharpen the saw a little bit, then when you eventually get back to sawing, you're gonna have a higher return on investment on your time when you're doing the sawing, right? So for example, let's say that I were to go out right now, okay? Now, anytime that I go out, I can meet pretty much 80-90% of people in that venue if I choose to. If I just choose to be very, very kind of like ding, 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 kind of jump all over the place, right? Now, of those people that I meet, there's going to be a percentage that are really, really, really excited to meet me. But there's another percentage, which is probably, maybe another 80% of the room that thought that I was cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, oh my God, like, wow. It's like they think that I'm cool. But the funny thing is that if I say, hey, look, I'm doing this thing, why don't you come out? They check me out on social media. They think it's kind of funny. And then there's going to be a percentage of those that resonate with what it is that they see. And then they're going to come out and then they're going to go into an environment where I am at the center stage. And so what's happening now is I'm putting them into my environment. So as opposed to being a more neutral environment, they're coming into a favorable environment. And now, sometimes I'll go to, my buddy has a Lamborghini, right? So he'll bring me to, I don't know, do we have any videos like this, like sitting on the computer? No? Okay. All right. Well, I could maybe pull them out. But the point is, like, you ever been to any of these like Lambo meetups or things like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen them, yeah.
Okay. So, my buddy's got a Lambo. So he'll drive me into, say, like, as opposed to like Agora Hills or something like that, right? It's like these beautiful, like Malibu looking areas. And it's a bunch of other Lamborghini owners there. And as you walk in, there's all these different like old school Lambos as you walk in. So it's like Lambo, Lambo, Lambo. You're seeing the tradition of it. And then everybody's there to celebrate the Lamborghini. And then everybody, I'll while you're talking, if you guys will excuse me, I'll pull my phone out. I'll try to get him a video of this because it's fucking hilarious. But in effect, what happens is that by the end of it, everybody's surrounding the car. It's just a fucking car. But, and then they pull the blanket off the car and everyone fucking cheers and everybody goes all fucking crazy just for this fucking car. Well, what's the point? That whole experience is celebrating this fucking car. Well, if you have some kind of like a container event, that experience to some extent is celebrating you, whether or not you got them access to it or if it's actually your event. So, in the same way that there's a whole bunch of people there that are lining up, they're lining up both to connect with other wealthy and successful people at that networking event. They're also there to celebrate the Lamborghini. They're going to line up to buy the Lamborghini. That's going to wind up happening to you if you wind up building an event for yourself. So, look, I just personally love the rush of going out. Like, I just like to be out where nobody knows me. I like the rush of social networking, hijacking the frame of like an entire club. I get off on that. It's like an entertainment point for me. But I also understand that if I want to improve my results, that if I'm just song the way that I would in, say, 2004, that's not necessarily the best route when the world's evolved. Okay, like Michael said, the crowds have evolved. Like here in LA, one thing that I emphasize to anybody who I take out is I'm like, look, this is fun to be out here, but you've got to understand, like, the real party here starts at 2 a.m, and it's going to be the after parties that you have access to. So, we have some incredible venues here, including some private clubs like, San Vicente Bungalow and places like that. They are very, very high quality. They're hard to get into, but even those are kind of pale in comparison to a lot of the private parties that you'd see, okay? And these are things like even little dinner parties or things like that, right? Like small dinner parties that you get invited to with just really, really, really high quality people. So understanding that like these people have to be able to get to know you quickly. Social media allows you to do that. Getting into better lead bases, getting around higher quality people, having something that you can invite the people who you meet out to is a huge, huge, huge difference maker. That doesn't change the fact that when you go out, you improve your communication skills. It doesn't mean that you're not going to learn tremendous amounts of incredible transformational ideas and paradigms from that. But I'd also tell you, like, in the same way that like if your room looks like shit, well, at some point you might want to pause and like fix your room. Like, I mean, if you look at the crib here, like just turn the crowd shot on there. This only shows like a tiny fraction of it, but I mean, like this whole house is like, there's couches everywhere. It's set up for parties. Like, we spent a couple weeks and time and money to set this whole place up for fucking parties. Well, what do you think that means if I invite a bunch of people back after a nightclub out? It means that I've got a fucking, literally an ongoing nightclub up in the Hollywood Hills that I can invite people to anytime that I want. Well, the time that I spent, and my buddy Rowan helped with that, a lot. Basically, what that means is that, it's just a lot easier. Like life just gets easier. So don't just keep sawing all the time. Pause for a minute, sharpen the saw before you get back to just sawing and sawing and sawing.
Yeah, so if you read Alex Hormozi's book, you read $100 Million Offer, $100 Million Leads,
yeah.
One of the things he talks about is like when you build a brand, the cost of acquisition goes down. So it's the ROI that you were referring to before. When you and I go to Ty's thing tomorrow, we're probably going to be more recognized than most of the people in there. In fact, I guarantee, because Ty does this, it's so subtle, Ty will shout you out while he's on stage. He'll say, Owen does whatever, or Michael. He does. Ty has shouted me out every single time I've come to one of his events. And I know why, I understand why he does it. And it's just one of these things where it's like, now what happens is my effectiveness as a networker, because other people are going to come up and talk to me, pre-selection works for men and women. Social proof works for men and women. And so because of that, because you took a little bit of time we haven't even really gone into building a brand, you are all going to build a brand whether or not you want to or not. If your brand is you and a bunch of like college t-shirts, drinking beer with blurry photos of you with your buddies at a college football game, then that's your brand. That's what your brand is. And you don't have much of a brand. But like all of you have a brand, whether or not you want to get one or not. My whole thing is, why not curate the brand? Because here's the thing. If a guy comes up to me and he says, hey man, I want to come on your podcast, the first thing I'm going to check is like, have you done anything exceptional for you to come on in the first place? And I'll look on his IG. The first place I'm going to look is in his Instagram. And if I see he has a YouTube and his YouTube and his Instagram don't match, like 2,000 YouTube subs and 500,000 Instagram, I was like, okay, this doesn't seem right. You can see these little discrepancies that happen, but I'm going to look because it's like he needs to curate his brand because I curated mine. This is one of the things, like people will come with you, with me, they'll come and try to steal value away. And it's like, I don't have any problem with you coming on my show, but there's these guys who will like pay for followers and they'll pay to like build up their social media brand. And then they'll come on my show and I'm like, I did the work to build a brand. Why don't you do the work to build it? I didn't buy a bunch of followers like a bunch of other guys do. It's really funny. It's the ones who like talk shit about me. They're the ones who are actually buying followers, saying that I'm the one who bought followers. You go on Social Blade. Yeah, you can go on Social Blade. See, I've never bought a single follower. So it's like one of these things where it's very difficult for them to deal with. And so, going back to what you said before, now consider this. Now you not only have you built a social circle, now that social circle gives you social proof for that next group of people. Every time I go to a nightclub with 20 or 30 girls, there's always 5 or 6 or 10 girls that come up to me who've never met me before, who want to meet me because they've seen me with other girls. And you'll see what'll happen tomorrow. A bunch of guys will come up to you like, oh, and Owen, can I get a picture? A guy will come up to you and be like, So what he'll either ask his friend, who is that guy? Or he'll come up to you and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so, hand you his card or something. And he'll be like, what is it that you do? And now the networking becomes even easier for you. And then the likelihood of him having you on your show or buying your product or whatever just goes up exponentially. So there's just this payoff for you actually building a brand prior to you even doing the networking. And as you're doing the networking, you're creating more and more social proof. That's why I tell guys, go to the same restaurants over and over again where the chef comes out to greet you. Man, you want to talk about a girl just like losing her shit. Like the chef comes out to greet you. Go to a club where the owner, the GM comes out to meet you. When I go to EDC, the owner of Tao Hakkasan, Jason Strauss, gives me and these 14 girls these like special wristbands that are like $2,000 each. And the girls are just blown away that I got these wristbands every year, and I take photos with him and send it to Jason. It's just these things that you do, these little networking hacks that you have. Dave Grutman, he runs Groot Hospitality in Miami. He runs Miami, and he also has Fountain Blue in Las Vegas, and he has these this one item on the menu at Komodo, and it's egg rolls. It's some kind of like, I can't remember, some pastrami egg rolls. That's what it was. It's pastrami egg rolls. Dave Grutman's pastrami egg rolls. And I take it, and I write Dave Grutman. I'm like, dude, these are the best things I've ever had. And he's like, writes me back. Now, I know it seems so subtle, but do you think I'm ever going to have trouble getting into any nightclub in Miami if Dave Grutman is writing me back? Or if I take pictures with Dave Grutman? Do you understand Bro, it's just so crazy when you do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like you see a picture with a guy and he's in a picture with Elon Musk or something, and Elon Musk actually looks like engaged. You're just like, you're not going to ignore him. And the thing is, the people who are listening to this right now, it seems shallow. Yes, it is shallow. We're hairless murder apes. It is shallow. All of this is shallow. If you've ever dated a woman and then have her lose attention with you, you know humans are fucking shallow. Have you ever seen a guy, his wife gets older and he goes and picks another wife? Humans are shallow.
Let me just add a little bit to that. Look, I'm somebody where I spend about 9 or 10 months a year in nature, okay? And I'll be out there in like literally in Bandon Beach in Oregon, hanging out with some fat toothless guy who I think is fucking hilarious, okay? And I watch Michael do things like that too. Michael's also always somebody who's helped. I watch you like literally take. I mean, you're saying humans are shallow, but like, and I agree with you, by the way. But I've watched you take out like the most chumpish guys I've ever seen to teach them to play basketball, like painstakingly teaching them to play basketball. So it's not that to learn about high status networking, that means that suddenly I don't want to be in Bandon Beach. I don't want to be in Alaska. I don't want to be in Montana. And I just sit in Miami all day just looking for the next clout or whatever. Okay, that's not what that means. What it means is that like, if I want to go to fucking the Redwood Forest and I want to sit up there with like real Americans and just fucking kick it with them and just joke around and laugh, I can do that. But it also means that if I want to go out in Miami, I don't have to become one of these bitter motherfuckers that's like, oh, those are all like the Hollywood people. Like they're fucking mean. They have no validity either. Like the fact that they're maybe working on expanding their reality, they're just a bunch of pieces of shit or things like that. It's like, no, I have the capacity to go and engage with whoever, right? For example, personally, I like talking to all women. I actually will talk to little old ladies. Sure. I'll talk to women that are morbidly obese, and I like to talk to women that are very beautiful as well. It's not as though like you only can ever talk to beautiful women, okay? I go to a Russian banya, and there's like the fancy one that Justin Bieber goes to, and I go there quite a bit. And then there's this other one with all old people, and I happen to go actually typically about 15 minutes extra just to go to the one with old people because I want to be around older people and kind of realize that I'm going to die someday and just kind of be around their vibe. And I actually genuinely enjoy that. Yeah. None of them have any idea. And by the way, this is hilarious, but like, I'll usually have a female companion with me. Yeah. So they're always like, who's he going to bring this time? And like their minds are fucking blown because mostly this like.
You go to the same places, do the same, like with my massage parlor, like this V-Spot. I go to V-Spot in fucking Chinatown and they're always like, which girl are you going to bring with? It's just the same exact thing. Yeah.
And it's because that's like kind of out of their reality, right? So they just can't, it's like totally out of place, especially that Banya because it's like not a place that most women would go. So they can't believe it. But the point is that like, I go there, I go out of my way to hang out with people like that because I don't always want to be around clout. But at the same time, I also understand that I have a career. I understand that I have a dating life. So because of that, like here would be an example. If right now I were to quit my business or if you were to quit your business, Michael, I don't think that you'd see very likely that you or I would be like, working on a resume and then handing out a resume to go meet other people, right? Yeah. We would just simply put the word out, hey, I'm available, to the larger network. and then see if somebody would kind of, bring you on.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is that, guys in like the kind of the Cole Gordon kind of world in that sort of space would be like, okay, could you help us with communication? Could you help us with public speaking? Could you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Could you help with marketing? Could you help with organic traffic? So on and so forth. So when you have a network, you're not necessarily running around like at the end of the day, when you see somebody handing out a resume, I'm not trying to insult you if you're handing out a resume. In fact, I encourage you and I wish you the best. But it also kind of shows like you're sort of at a point where you don't really have a network. And as a result of that, a resume...
You could have invested in that and you chose not to. Yes, and
That's
now
a
you're
good
trying
point.
to catch up. It's so often resume, we talk about resume, it's also the guys who are divorced and then they're trying to get back into the dating scene. It's the same thing, like because they're trying to put a resume out there instead of like they didn't curate a brand. This is one other thing, you talk often about the abundance mindset and the scarcity mindset. So when you talk about the resistance to it, for me, we're talking about networking right now. And so if you listen to me talk about these people that I network with, one thing that I've noticed is that when I'm around, when I talk about some of the other people that I was talking about, I'm always trying to learn from them, and that makes sense. When I hear other people like Brad Lee or some of my other friends, when they talk about other people that they know, from my standpoint, it's like, oh, there's a lesson you got there, and you're going to pass that lesson to me, because that's an abundance mindset. The scarcity mindset is what? Oh, you're name dropping. The name dropping is like if you want to know when people are going to just stay poor forever, it's the ones who are like, oh, he's name dropping. It's like, no, he's trying to glean information that he got from someone else to give to you, because that's how it's passed down. Does that make sense? The other thing is, anytime you give this information and you tell the stories, I mean, Think and Grow Rich, it's nothing but name dropping, right? That's what the whole book is. But you learn lessons from it. That's what you do. And when you find that out, when you see that the people who are doing that, like you come to an understanding. I mean, who name drops more than Ty Lopez, right? Ty does it a ton. But when he does it, he's teaching you a lesson about the things that he's learned. And like Ty talks about, he's made more millionaires than anyone. I'm one of them. Ty is absolutely true when he's correct when he says that. Because he's gleaned so much information and he passes it down to people with a scarcity mindset, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like you're trying too hard. But people in abundance mindset, you know what they do? They take out their notepad. Whenever I'm with really wealthy, successful people, they're always listening and trying to learn more. You understand what I'm saying? The other thing is, this is another great thing, and I'll bring this up when we go to Ty's thing tomorrow. There'll be guys in there with $100 million, several of them, like super, super wealthy. And you'll ask them, hey man, when was the last time you left a negative YouTube comment somewhere?
I know, right?
And they'll laugh at me. They're like, yo, bro, how do you leave a YouTube comment? I'm too busy fucking beautiful women and making money. I don't know how to leave a YouTube comment. The problem is, like, I don't mind the negative YouTube comments because it helps the algorithm when they do it. But the problem that they don't understand is, and I try to say this truly out of pity for the people who leave the negative YouTube comments, truly, is that the thing is, it's not, because you're not hurting me, you're just helping me, make more money. The issue is you're hurting you. Like, there is no reality where someone leaves. You should listen to Austin Dunham. He talks about this. When he was a kid, he used to leave negative YouTube comments, and then he realized like what it was doing to his brain. There is no reality where you're successful and you leave negative YouTube comments. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that are like actually like realistically critical. Hey, the audio's not good here, or maybe you should talk about this instead,
or a real debate.
Or a real debate. Like that's totally fine. It's the ones that where it's just like the personal attacks. You just like, you look at the person and you just feel nothing but pity. It's like, I own you. You're commenting on my thing. You've never been with a beautiful, like your dick is still dry. You're still broke, and you're making these comments. And the problem is, like, I feel nothing but pity because I want to help. I'm a performance coach and I want to help. But like, I promise you, like, I don't know what your life is like, but what I do know is at the top, you can't find a single person who's successful, who's leaving the comments like you're doing. What does that tell you if no one successful is doing what you're doing? And so you just try to help them and wake them out of it. And then the last one, this is Justin Waller. He taught me this and it was absolutely fantastic. Whenever they leave the comments, one thing that I've been doing recently is I'm like, hey man, I realized that, like, I saw you left a nasty comment, and I understand that, like, you're going through some stuff. And I just want to let you know that I'm pulling for you. And everybody, like, I can't see the comments now, but, like, I'm sure there's some negative ones. But with those people, I just want to let them know I'm pulling for you too. I'm hope that you can just, like, pull. It was like the airplane pulling the yoke back. You can pull out of this nosedive of your life, because there's nothing in the world, like, dude, I used to be a hater too. I remember in college there were guys who were just better looking than me, who were big athletes, and just got all the girls when I was like, this is like 25 years ago. And I remember being like, man, these guys are doing so much better than me, and being jealous of them. And now looking back and realizing, no, let's learn from them. Do you understand? Having the abundance of like your friends make $1 billion and date a super hot girl, feeling good for them, supporting them. That's the thing that you do. And then when I finally do get to those dinners where everybody there is worth like 10x more than me, you know what I find out? That's all they do too. That's all they do too is support one another. You go out with fucking Dan Fleischman and Wes Watson and all these guys, you're out with them, you can't even pay the bill. They're fighting to like pay the fucking $2,000 dinner bill before like racing to do with each other. And you sit there and if you could just shut the fuck up for a few minutes, you will listen to fucking Taylor Welsh or Cole Gordon or one of these guys say something that makes you $10 million. If you can just shut the fuck up and listen. But other people will hear that and be like, no, bro, you're name dropping. And that's the thing. It's like, that's the difference between abundance and scarcity. That's it.
Yeah, it's and let's see how deep. We're about 45 minutes deep. Okay, so we'll run this to about an hour, then we're gonna go to bed because we got a big day tomorrow. Okay, so a couple different things. Okay, so I'm gonna give a couple of my takes on that too. There's something called the winner effect.
Yes.
We get status anytime that we feel like we're better than somebody else. One of the ultimate hopes in the world is not to actively compete in a healthy win-win way, but instead to just say, fuck that person, and then feel like you're above them. Okay, so that's like a very, very easy way to get dopamine. So this is in the Sermon on the Mount, okay? Do not just start shit talking. Don't judge the chip in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own eye. So what you wanna do is like when you see people fucking up, you could be aware of it, just be aware of it, realize that everybody's on their own journey, and then say, okay, well, that's where they're at, but focus on your own lane completely. It's actually very selfish to do that, and then learn from people out there who are winning, okay? This is fucking massive, but the problem is, I believe that a lot of those people that you're seeing that would hear that advice, they have an underlying belief that they couldn't learn from it. Like, they actually don't believe that it's possible.
No, but hold on. If you, because they're victim mentality, but the victim mentality doesn't just apply to like their life, then the whole world is against them. There's an entire conspiracy, a nefarious conspiracy to keep them down. So the fact that someone took a course and then became rich, no, you cheated. You had to have ripped someone off because that doesn't happen. There's no way that really doing hard work and understanding how to scale a business and reading all these business books and like learning from people who know better than you, there's no way that actually makes you rich. Now, if you're on the other end of it, you know it's true. And then you're actually confused. Like I look at my life and I'm like, how are not more people doing this? This doesn't make any sense to me. But like from their standpoint, it's like, no, I know this doesn't work because the world is against me. My victim mentality spreads to everyone. Does that make sense? And so what is it? It's easier for me to stay in my mom's basement, for me to not talk to women, for me to leave negative TikTok comments or YouTube comments or whatever. It's easier for me to do that than to actually go out and do the work. Because if I do the work, I might fail. And then it's like the conspiracy, like, could you imagine if your whole life you believed there was a conspiracy to stop people like you from succeeding, and then later on someone just like you does well? Often we'll get guys in my course and they'll be short or they'll be Indian, Asian, whatever, and they have limiting beliefs. Maybe they're German, whatever. They have limiting beliefs. So I'll show them 10 other guys who are exactly like them who are crushing it. And you should see, like, they almost want to cry because they're like, I have nowhere to hide anymore. I have nowhere to hide.
It also crashes their dopamine.
Yeah, it does, because they have nowhere to hide anymore. It's just one of the saddest things that you've ever seen. You see it over and over again, and you try to show them an abundance mentality will actually help you understand. Rule number 5 in MOA, we don't ever hate on people. We don't ever talk shit about people behind their back. If someone is doing better than us, we need to learn from them. I have friends of mine who make $100 million a year, but they cheat on their wife and they do a bunch of blow. You know what I do? The $100 million a year part, I keep that. They're beating their wife or they're doing the coke, I don't keep that part. You know, I separate the art from the artist. Does that make sense? You know, like OJ ran for 2,000 yards in a season and killed his wife. Like, you can separate the two things from one another, right? So, like, that was the other thing that I learned, and just to never hate on people and just to actually like understand, or just have not pity, but just have an understanding. Some people have mental disorders. There's this one study that came out recently that goes over like people on social media who like leave a lot of these negative comments. When they've done surveys, they found a lot of them. There's a high association with autism, a very high association with sociopathy. Like just think about it. Like, what would it take for you or I to leave repeated YouTube comments. Like, what in the world? Nothing. Because something would have to take me away from a business that is fulfilling to me. I rescue fucking animals. Like, I have an incredible girlfriend. I have, like, we bring women home together. Like, I just cannot imagine my life where I have this incredible, fulfilling life and just, like, leaving multiple YouTube comments. And so that was the thing that I learned. Again, one more time. I sat there with a bunch of super wealthy dudes and I say, hey guys, when was the last time any of you left a negative comment for someone on Instagram? And they're like, I don't even know how to do it. I don't even know how to do it. Yeah. And that success leaves clues. You should look at yourself and say, why am I a failure? Well, if I'm explaining to you how you could be successful, number one, it's always going to feel awkward. Success will always feel awkward. If I explain to you things to do to be successful, but you still think the world is against you, then you're not going to believe anything I have to say, and you're going to keep going back to like the way you know unsuccessful people. They say words like try hard or name drop. That's how you know basically that those people are not successful.
Yeah, it's the framework that I think about this from. I call it spiritual bondage. And what it is that you've given up on life, and so you're just looking for the dopamine. So whatever can give you dopamine or relief or a cope is basically what you're doing. And part of, I can remember there was this one clip that I had where I gave like some very, very harsh feedback to a student. And that clip, well, this is a very strange story. Funny enough, there's this, you can actually look this up on TikTok. There's this TikTok called, I think it was called Owen Cook Official. And it was actually a fan of mine who was trying to help me out. And he wanted to help me go viral. So he picked these clips of me like, being very harsh with students. And immediately one of them went to, I think, 4.8 million views. And it got put all over like, it was like H3H3 and like every podcast that you can think of. And basically they're basically kind of parroting it like this seminar where people basically go to get shit talked. So like it's being framed as like it's like he's paying this guy to yell at him. And what they don't understand, because they're completely in this reality of this sort of like easy dopamine matrix of like coping and like shit talking and stuff like that, is that guy, if you're paying money because you want to get better, you're willing to take critical feedback, and you're willing to take critical feedback because you believe that you could improve. Like there's something in your brain that says, if I took critical feedback, I could improve. If I learned from a mentor, I could improve. So you have the underlying belief that you can improve. So for example, like if you were to come to like, one of our seminars, we would gladly give you a lot of very, very harsh feedback. But I would predict that if you bring your kind of fragile aunt to one of our seminars and we were to break her down, she would just say, those guys are mean. Like those guys are mean. Like they're so mean and cruel.
Yeah, because you have to first off believe that constructive criticism is helpful. And a lot of people don't like that, especially like say in the field of evolutionary psychology. There was this one professor, I can't remember if it was a professor, it was some lady who came to David Buss and said something to the effect of, you telling people all this information, don't you see how it's harmful and it hurts women's feelings because you're explaining that men and women have innate sex differences. And Dr. Buss's response, it's at the very end of his book, When Men Behave Badly, was that it's better for the world to know. It's better to know the truth. Well, in other cases, it's like you're dealing with a guy who like clearly is not taking his weight seriously, or a guy who's clearly like consistently being cheated on by his ex, or is in a situation where he's in a bad situation with a business partner and there's some crypto involved, and you want to tell him, hey bro, your money is gone, but you can't, but you tell it to him, and then just imagine like Ty Lopez.
There's some crypto involved.
Yeah. There's always some crypto involved. So Ty Lopez told me the story once. It was really funny. He's like, I had a friend of mine. He came to me and he showed me this app, and I could like see a ton of holes in the app, and like the app had a ton of competitors, and he asked the guy, he goes like, how much money did you put in this app? He goes, I put my entire life savings. And Ty didn't know how to tell him. It's like, bro, all of your money is gone. It's like, it's the same thing with a lot of these crypto guys that are like holding on, they're like suing people, and I'm like, no bro, your money's gone. Like, but nobody was willing. So the H3 is a great example. Because he became so popular on a social media platform, he never had to take the constructive criticism. He wasn't in the military. He doesn't understand that concept. So it's like the fact that your type of instruction or mind could help other people is outside of his reality. So what he sees is, you're just getting yelled at. Yeah. But I mean, he's also like a fat kind of loser. Like, now it sounds like I'm hating on him, but like in any other walk of life, he would not be nearly as successful as the crutch and the leverage that's been afforded to him because of the stuff that he says. And in part, by the way, the crazy stuff he says is why he's so popular. You understand what I'm saying? So it's
also, though, he's a leader of this kind of like, I guess it's, kind of like left-leaning ideology where it's kind of like, you sort of just like succumb to the system and you just like let the system kind of nourish you, and there's not like a sort of a
There's no way up.
yeah, there's no upward mobility. So because there's no upward mobility, we kind of just sit here, and we just kind of like in this like sloth like reality, and kind of just like look at little clips and go, that's just like kind of what he does. And I'd love to hang out with the guy. Actually, I'd like to meet him, but probably not going to happen. Although perhaps it could be at Ties tomorrow. You never know. But it's like, I wonder if there would be a way to show him like, there is like another way of seeing the world, and it's not that necessarily like one way is better than another way, because at the end of the day, we're all on our journey, and we're like, our way is not perfect either. But there are other ways of seeing the world that maybe you haven't considered. And one of those ways is simply that you can expand your life experience. Like you can really, really, really expand your life experience. Like your life could just get a lot cooler, but there's certain pieces that have to be involved. And here's the big piece. Every single second that you're wasting looking at a bunch of dumb gossip, inherently you're cementing that. It's kind of like a spiritual bondage to being stuck in that fucking loop of not advancing and not ascending, right? It's literally a spiritual slavery to where it's like, I'm just gonna like look at this dumb shit and I can't advance. And like, I really believe that even spiritually, this is just my own opinion, spiritually people resonate with like McDonald's, or they resonate with like gossip, and even drugs. Like we think of drugs as addictive because it gives you like serotonin or dopamine or a high, right? But I actually believe that it's addictive specifically because it wastes your time. Like it actually resonates with your spiritual condition of wasting your time.
I think people are spiritually aligned to flat Earth now. Mm-hmm. Have you seen like flat Earth is like this religious thing? Mm-hmm. Like I just did a flat Earth debate a couple of hours ago. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Zerka. He asked me to come on. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of these things where it's like you feel included, but like, man, I read The Power now because of you, and the thing is like the idea that your ego is not there to make you happy. It's there to create an identity for you. It's there to find a level of equilibrium. This is the reason why you see people in abusive relationships stay in those relationships, or people that were abused, then when they grow up, they abuse other people. It's because they found some level of equilibrium. And so that feels better a lot of times than being successful. Remember, networking is what we're talking about to be successful, which means you have to come outside of yourself. And so that's really difficult for a lot of people to do, especially because we've been afforded so many. Do you remember that video of Mike Tyson punching that guy on an airplane? That's a YouTube commenter. That guy is he went through life thinking, I could just say whatever I want. Exactly. I could just say whatever I want. And then he forgot that Mike Tyson was there. Does that make sense? No one is like in my life, like if I were to compare the negative comments that I got or that you've got to the number of people that would actually come to my face and say anything to me, it's zero. Like no one has ever come to me and say anything, because in real life that doesn't work. So what we've done is we've afforded these men the ability to not go approach women, but instead watch pornography. We've afforded this way of like, instead of actually like critically looking over certain things, they look for like quick ways. Like, again, there's so much expertise you can learn on certain subjects, but instead you're going to watch your favorite YouTuber's video of like a 5-minute description of it and not understand the concepts whatsoever. Does that make sense? And then criticize it. Situation with you and your program, they're like, I've seen this too before. It's like these alpha male programs where they yell at guys who are on the ground. And the problem is, the problem with those programs is I bet there's a lot of constructive feedback, but then at the end, there's one guy who just doesn't get it. He just can't get it, and he needs to be yelled at like that. And by the way, if you think that's offensive, just watch any of Navy SEAL training. Like that's all it is. Watch any of it. Just you're gonna experience that the whole time. Now, I was a navigator in the Air Force. And the way I was instructed by the senior pilots and the senior navigators was very condescending, but it wasn't. They didn't yell. They don't make you do push-ups when you miss a turn or something like that. But it's that same kind of like constructive feedback. Like do you understand that when someone gives you constructive feedback, that they're doing it because they care about you, because they love you, and not because they don't love you? When you understand that, that's fine. A lot of times, like you said, your aunt, your super sensitive aunt. There's conversations where I've had with my mother where I was trying to explain something to her to help her, and she would like take it as like a personal affront or like offense. One of the issues I've seen also, this is a big one.
It's a fully different paradigm.
Yeah.
They live in a paradigm where they're looking for comfort and dopamine stability.
The comfort.
As opposed to
equilibrium. Yes, comfort and equilibrium as opposed to ascension. That's exactly right. I was listening to Mooncat. Do you remember I told you about that? She debunked evolutionary psychology, whatever that video was. It doesn't matter. And then there was like a debunking of her debunking. And the thing is, like, it's one of these things where it's like there's these ugly truths that you learn when you study human evolution. They're very ugly. Like why is it that men are so much stronger than women in their upper body? It's because they killed other men for access to women. It's because they hunted and they created fortification, and they had to work and compete with other men for access to women. That's an ugly truth that a lot of people don't like, especially if you believe in an egalitarian society. If you tell people, though, it's like you give them criticism and tell them, hey, like, this is the reason why your relationship isn't working. The dating, I don't know if you ever heard, the dating coach who gives the same advice to the man as he does to the woman, like, just fucking clueless, like, no idea. Or the therapist who treats men and women exactly the same, just fucking clueless. When you see those type of situations and then you try to give them critical feedback, then they're like, well, what about other people's, what about their feelings, right? Whoa, man, what if you hurt their feelings? What if you make the person cry? And it's just like, in evolutionary psychology, they go over innate sex differences. In the Pleistocene epoch, or in our ancestral past, let's go 50,000 years ago. Was it you, the Jared Diamond book? No, it was Ty who had me, The World Up Until Yesterday. I forgot what it was called. If you go back to those situations, men hunted almost the vast majority of the time, regardless of what that Woman the Hunter paper that was turned out to be bogus said. Men hunted most of the time. Women stayed back, cared for children, and did some foraging. Now, if I say that, is that true or not true? It's clearly true. If I say men throughout history have been more violent than women and been the leaders of tribes more often than women, is that true or not true? Of course it's true, but it's descriptive, it's not normative. It doesn't mean the world has to be like that forever. It doesn't mean like that the world has to be that way. And when I describe it, it's like if I have an oncologist who describes pancreatic cancer, it doesn't mean he condones pancreatic cancer. He's not attacking his patient when he says it. He's giving critical feedback. Can you take critical feedback? And here's the thing, and I don't mean to say this because I'm in my 40s, but it sure does fucking feel like kids in their 20s now are worse at it than I was when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's getting progressively harder for them to take critical feedback.
Yeah, have you ever watched Yuri Bezmenov's stuff? Okay, so Yuri Bezmenov was a KGB defector in the 80s. And he basically explained that you don't need to go to destroy a country. You don't need to go create like a hot war. You don't need to storm California and start rushing up into LA with like a bunch of soldiers. All that you have to do is create a cultural rot within the country itself and demoralize it. And basically in these old videos, it's Yuri Bezmenov, Yuri Bezmenov. He basically predicts almost everything that's happening now. And a lot of this is, look, obviously, Michael and I are very individualist type people, right? So as a result of that, you might call that right-leaning. But I don't think that either of us are like, party affiliate types of people, right?
I'm telling you exactly what it is. I don't know if you ever thought of it like this. You and I, 20 years ago, would have probably been considered left-leaning.
That's funny, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the Overton window shifted so far to the left that we were just left behind. Mm-hmm. And so now we're conservatives. Mm-hmm. That was never my plan. But it was just like, you'll see the Overton. You don't believe me? Go look at clips right now of Barack Obama being against gay marriage and fucking Joe Biden talking about, I don't want to send my children to fucking public school with black people. He literally says that in 1977. The Overton window shifts to the left. But if I have values like, if you had told me back in 2003, do you think it's rational for a man to transition to become a woman and to go into a fucking bathroom with my daughter? Do I think that that's okay? I'd be like, fuck, no, that's insane. And everyone would have agreed with me in 2003. And now there's this like lunacy that's happened. And I'm like, wait a second, I don't understand. I thought this was normal and the world shifted to the left. And so because we still have these values that we have, we're like technically just conservatives now, even though I don't even think I was that conservative. But now every year I look more and more conservative because I don't think men should wrestle women in high school wrestling. Now I'm a conservative because I believe in that. Gay people, get married. You should suffer in marriage as much as the rest of us. Gay people, go be in the military. You should go sit there and do push-ups with the rest of us. I don't give a shit about that. But like basic shit, like I'm supposed to tell, if a man wants to transition to a woman, that's fine. Do whatever you want. Culturally, you can transition. But then it's like, a trans woman is a biological woman, and I'm supposed to agree with that. I'm like, but then what happens if I agree that a trans woman is a biological woman? Then what happens to gravity, evolution? What happens to thermodynamics, relativity? Like, all objective truths are now not useful anymore. I am a conservative just because I believe in objective truths. That, and because I'm left, yeah, exactly. Because I did not fall into postmodernism liberalism, and because I understand like the concepts in science. It's funny, science works for liberals when it's like global warming, but it doesn't work for liberals when it's like innate sex differences. Because I sit there and I want to stick to these ultimate truths, now I'm a conservative.
I'll tell you my take on it, because so here's what I try to do. Okay, so what I try to do is I will spend a huge amount of time trying to consider what somebody who thinks differently from me thinks, okay? So what I've said to myself is I'm like, all right, well, clearly collectivism is clearly like a viable ideology, right? Collectivism is a viable ideology because traditionally about half the world are collectivists, okay? And so typically around half the world, you know, in effect, what we're trying to get at is like, you know, not strive to look at things objectively, but try to strive to look at things that are friendly to the collective, okay? So even though to me, that way of thinking is completely insane, and that's not something that I'm able to relate to or to connect to, clearly there is some function of collectivism to where this is like a common thing. So it's funny because like individualists are commonly like very, very wanting to debate with collectivists. And the reason why individualists want to debate with collectivists is because if an individualist is striving for objective truth and they know that they're debating with somebody who's saying things that make a collective feel better, then, you know, that's obviously a very easy debate to win. Now, my take on this is that they simply think differently from me. They're in, from my point of view, the way that I see it, in some ways in a coping mentality. But look, you know, I just broke my leg, right? And so part of breaking my leg was that I had to like, you know, stay off of it. And now I'm hobbling around. And it probably would not have made sense for me to be running around at full tilt on a broken leg. So as a result of that, I have to shelter the leg. Now, ideally over time, if that leg is sheltered, I can gradually keep putting more and more weight on it. And now I'm at a point that I can kind of hobble around and only use the wheelchair here or there. Although I do still do use it when I go out because I think it's funny. So I actually still bring it to go out. And then I let my friends borrow it. But anyway, so the point being is that if somebody needs a little bit of help and they maybe need to be told something that's false in order to feel better about themselves, I think that's fine. But what I'd say is like, okay, well, where's the goalpost? Like, where do we kind of like, you know, help you to get a little bit of a softer take and maybe you're a little bit nicer with you, but like, is there an end point to this? Because like, okay, this will sound a little bit controversial, but like, if I knew that right now, me just giving away my business and me giving away every single penny that I have would actually work to kind of like, you know, help people, I would do it like that. But the problem is, usually that doesn't work. It just creates dependency. So from my point of view, a lot of this collectivist stuff that which just to me seems completely insane. It's like, okay, look, like I'll kind of just let that be there. I'm not going to judge it. But what I would say is like, could we have an endpoint? Like, could we not just like make YouTube shows about it and like wallow in it? Like, could there be some kind of an endpoint? Like maybe somebody going to rehab, right? You don't just go to rehab to live in the fucking rehab. You know, you go to rehab to get out of the rehab. So like my question is not like collectivism. Like I can see that as a viable ideology for like, really, it's about half the planet, but where's the out point? That's kind of how I think about it.
So here's the thing. You have two issues here. Number one, you know a really great way to go viral on YouTube a couple years ago, maybe 2017 to 2019, was man versus woman arguing, right? They don't do it quite as much anymore, but like, you know what a terrible way to grow on social media is? Like slowly showing men improving incrementally. It is the worst fucking way to grow. It really is. If you walked out with you or I and had the number of people when you and I go somewhere that want to take pictures with us or like, thank you for changing my life. And then I walk out with like guys with huge like streamers and like nobody recognizes them or huge models. It's like, wow, it feels like we're really changing the world. Then why is my following 1/10 the size of this other guy's? I'm not hating. I understand. It's because the world likes this very chaotic, the pain body that Eckhart Tolle talks about. They like being engaged in the pain body. They like this controversy. I don't hate anyone. I don't say bad things I try not to say bad things about anyone. And I really, really, really never try to criticize somebody on YouTube that if I've got their phone number. That means I can text them privately. I'm really big on that. So one of the things is like, what were we talking about just a second ago?
Collectivism.
Yeah. So with the collectivism, like when the other than there's a few guys
because they want to make a truth that works for
yeah,
the collective.
So here's the problem. The big example of that was What is a Woman? You remember the whole documentary that came out, What is a Woman? Regardless of like what his personal beliefs are, you saw these like progressives could not answer the question. And so instead of them recognizing, hey, we have a hole in our ideology, maybe we should patch up this hole, what they did was say, you're a bigot for asking the question now, what is a woman? You see what I'm saying? And like, no, it's a legitimate question. I don't hate it. I understand what's going on, but it's like, it's something that we should be talking about. And what you'll find is, with a few exceptions, like Jasmine Jafar is an exception, Farha Khalidi, Destiny is an exception to this. Most progressives will not debate conservatives. They just don't do well. Because when conservatism, unless you get to the trad cons, those are different, the religious ones. When you deal with most conservatives, they're going to deal in objective truths, and it's very difficult for other people to deal with those truths. Does that make sense? And so you're right. That's why you rarely see collectivists, groupthink, right? More of a socialist mindset. Socialism never worked. Every time it's tried, it doesn't work. When you get into a debate about it, they just keep losing on that point. And so that collective sort of groupthink, they're always going to lose in these debates. And so what they'll do is they point fingers at you and make fun of you. And they think, it's just so crazy to me, like how many people who are liberals I want to have conversations with about intersectional dynamics, and they just think that they're so above me. But I'm like, I run circles around you. If we get into any conversation about evolutionary psychology, I'm going to destroy you. You have no chance in like talking to me, but you think you're above me because you're a liberal. It's cool. It's one of the craziest things, and they won't have them on. A great example: Rollo Tomasi not going on Chris Williamson. That makes no. Someone explain that one to me. I know the answer. Like the reason why is because Chris Williamson, if he has to face Rollo, he's going to have a very difficult time answering some of these things that he said with other people, because Rollo is so based in some of the things that he's saying. Because he's been doing research on it for 20 years. So, you know, that's some of the stuff.
And Chris is one of the better ones. He's actually fucking awesome.
Chris is awesome, but why hasn't Chris had Rollo on? Like, really ask yourself that question. Like, realistically, if you want to go back far enough, Chris doesn't have a show if intersexual dynamics isn't a topic brought to YouTube initially by like you and Rollo. Think about that. But then they're like, well, but no, we're too good to have you guys on. We're too good to speak to you. Like, that's where we've gotten to in this situation. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of Chris Williamson. I am. But the thing is, when you see that, it's like one of these situations because Chris Williamson said on his show was like, I'd lose half my audience if I had Rollo on one time. You know what I'm saying? So like that's one of these situations where it's like, why? I've always had an issue because I'm friends with Destiny and Rollo, and I've always had an issue when I see someone like wanting to get to the bottom of the issue, but they have Destiny on, but they won't have Rollo on. Like, I've always had an issue, and the reason, right, it is because what happens is if Rollo comes on there and he starts making some fucking sense, or if Michael Sartain starts making sense, and we've seen this with Myron. Myron will come on there and they're just ready. They're ready to just blast him, and he starts saying things in a very calm voice that just makes a lot of sense, and they're like, holy shit, what do we do? What do we do? Let me explain something to you.
I will say, though, one of the true stud debaters from the left is that Destiny guy. I mean,
Yeah,
geez.
he's great.
I mean, he's a machine.
Yeah, he does so much research. Yeah, he's great. But
he's the kind of guy where like he could go tell you something that you know is wrong, and you just go, you win.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's just really.
But like with Andrew Tate, like Andrew was going after something. It was really great. I had Richard Reeves on my podcast. He's a professor from the Brookings Institute, and he said the reason why Andrew Tate blew up so much is because academia was afraid to consider the idea that men suffer. The idea that men suffer is so against traditional leftist academic policy. Men do not suffer, especially white men. It is impossible to consider the idea of them suffering. So we will never discuss it in academia. And meanwhile, the number one cohort of individuals taking their own lives were what? Men who had been divorced or had been zeroed out, but we're just going to ignore them and pretend like this never happened. And then when Andrew Tate comes out and he's speaking directly to this core audience that they weren't being argued against, they were being told they didn't even exist. Of course he became the most famous person in the world. That's what happened because he was willing to have a discourse that nobody else was. And that's why he became, even if you agree with him, don't disagree with him, that's why he became so popular. They canceled him because he was saying things that were wrong, or did they cancel him because he was saying things that were right, or he was? But the reason why they really canceled him is because he was starting to make sense to a lot of people, and that was troublesome for so many
I'd
people.
also recommend, if you guys want to learn more about that, look up Mike Benz on X, MikeBenz, and he will give you a history of a lot of that crazy stuff. By the way, so we're an hour and 15 minutes in, and you and I have to get to that Ty Lopez meetup tomorrow. So we're gonna yeah. So I think here's what I'm thinking. Okay, so we started off on networking, okay, and it seems to me like what we'll do is we will do more. Okay, we'll bring back more networking. So what I'd like you guys to do, why don't you guys let us know in the comments what else you'd like to learn about networking, or some of the critical thinking topics that we've talked about here. We'll be back with more. Any other final thoughts that you want to give before we kind of wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing we were talking about networking, like I just want to reiterate one time if you guys want to understand. So there's a couple of them. Value arbitrage is something that's really important to understand. And that is when you meet people that are like higher status and you want to connect with them, it's connector, suggester, content creator. So it's the connector. So I'm connecting other people. Other people don't understand. They call that name dropping, but it's like you're connecting one person to another person. Does that make sense? Suggester is the person suggesting this book. I love... my buddy Patrick Bet-David, he says this. He says, "Book drop, don't name drop. Book drop, don't name drop." So, by the way, you should read Patrick Bet-David's book. It's called The Next 5 Moves. That's where I got that from. Or Your Next 5 Moves. So that's it. And then content creator. It's a lot of times, this is, again, going back to humans being shallow. What do we remember the most? Is it the party or is it the photos and videos we got at the party? Well, unfortunately, it is the photos and videos. If you have ever thrown parties on a regular basis, you know having more photos and videos of you with hotter girls at your party is the thing that gets more girls to show up to your party and more people to want to come to your party. So connector, suggester, content creator, and then always be solving problems for other people, and you will get invited to anything. And there's one other thing, kind of a controversial take that I have, and that is having hundreds of female friends. And it doesn't mean you don't sleep with them. You can sleep with some of them, but the main thing is you need to have hundreds of female friends that are on your side, because female friends get you calibrated to being around attractive females. They get you invited to everything, and they introduce you to other women.
Yeah. Guys, 100% agree with that, by the way. Guys, thank you for being here. It's late. We could probably keep this going for 10 more hours. We're going to wrap it up. We'll come back with more. Let us know your questions, right? And by the way, some of the more bizarre comments that I've seen in the live broadcast. Well, guys, let me give you some advice, like honestly, straight up. Look, I'm saying this as somebody where I've created my life to be fucking amazing. Michael's created his life to be fucking amazing. Just focus on your own growth. Like, in all seriousness, just focus on your own growth. Okay, look, here's the North Star. If thinking about something or typing something gives you this weird dopamine spike, but you haven't accomplished anything, just don't do it, okay? Make a commitment that within 5 years from now, you're a multimillionaire, you have an incredible social circle, you're super healthy, you've traveled the world, you've had a great life, you're living your dreams, you're on your purpose, you're on your passions. Make that commitment. Anything other than that that's taking you away from that is fucking bullshit. Just focus on how to get to the next level. Look, everybody has their different version of a win, right? Michael loves to have huge social networks in a home base, which then he can transfer to other major cities too.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
The
difference between traveling and staying in one place.
Yeah. And for me, I want to be in Alaska. I want to be in Montana. I just came back from 3 weeks in the south with my kids. We're up in the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're in Savannah, Georgia. We're in Charleston, South Carolina. We're in Jekyll Island. We had a beautiful, beautiful time at Nashville. I mean, this trip is not cheap. And, it takes money, time, energy, and intention to be able to do things like this. It was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. We did a bunch of events while we were there. Guess what? I'm about to go travel the Pacific Northwest. I'm not flying to Portland and Seattle coming up. I'm driving to Portland, Seattle. We're going to go through Yosemite. We're going to drive up to Yosemite National Park and spend a little bit of time there. Then we're going to drive up to Mount Shasta, spend a little bit of time there. Then we're going to go to Crater Lake, this giant volcanic lake, spend a bit of time there. And then we're going to drive through Mount Hood. And then we're going to go into Portland. We're going to do a little bit of hiking around Portland, probably go to Multnomah Falls, Eagle Creek. Then we're going to wind up shooting up into Seattle. We're going to do it. We're going to do a free event in Portland, free event in Seattle. We'll wind up doing 2 days up in Seattle, and then we'll drive through Olympic National Park, down through Cannon Beach. We're going to go down the Pacific Coast Highway through the Oregon coast. We're going to go to the Redwood Forest, spend a couple of days in there. We're going to drive down to Big Sur, Monterey. There's a beautiful aquarium there. We're going to go drive through all the cliffs of Big Sur. We're going to drive home, okay? And these trips are not fucking cheap. That's called spending, you know, I'm a 44-year-old man. I like to spend time with my family. I like to be in the outdoors. Everybody has a different version of bliss for them. Okay, while I'm doing this, Michael will probably be hosting some of the sickest parties you've ever seen in Vegas or wherever he's doing at the time. And the bottom line is that life can be fucking played in the real world and fucking awesome. And we're here to give you tools to do that. Or it can be played in the internet, and it can be played in this sort of disassociated mode in your mind where you're just coping and trying to stay afloat in this kind of like ocean of dopamine, and you're just fucking drowning. So every single thing that we're talking to you about here are meant to be tools that get you to that point. Everybody has a different version of that. What we want to know is, what is that version for you? I'd love for you to let us know that in the fucking comments, okay? Go do that in the comments. What is your version of personal happiness? How do you curate it? Michael and I will come back and we'll do other content on that as well, because we're both very proactive and high intention in what it is that we do. In the meantime, Ed and I are about to go to bed. This actually was live, so good to see you guys. We're going to be at Ty Lopez's party tomorrow. Probably post some social media content from there. And Michael, thank you for coming on, bro. This is fucking awesome, man. Yeah, we'll be back, okay? Good night, guys. We'll see you soon. Peace.